Tackle all of your NFL action on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to join today. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And with that, we welcome Aditi Kinkhabwala to the show. How you doing, Aditi?
Good morning. Or good afternoon now, actually, guys. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Aditi, I haven't seen you in like a year.
I know. Seriously, Jay, I was thinking that. And my heart was actually getting really excited to see you again.
Oh,
it's been that long. How you been, my friend?
I'm great. How are you? Is everything good?
I feel a little bit like Jamar Chase when he says Justin Jefferson doesn't return his phone calls. It feels like you've just been a little big time. That's why I've missed you.
That's completely
Is that what's going on here?
I have a question for you. It's a point that Bull made. Did you see the Hard Knocks episode last night? Imagine you did.
I did.
Bull said, and I didn't see it, so I have to take Bull's word for it, but he said that Mike Tomlin was the star of the show. And
he was.
And you've seen that up close and personal for years. Dustin said, of all the coaches he's had, he's the best. I think he was
for such a little time I spent with him, he's had the biggest impact.
Okay, yeah. So Aditi, we kind of figure that his secret fastball is his ability to connect with all 53, which obviously you need a different club for each guy. What, in your view, is Mike Tomlin's secret sauce? Is that it?
That's exactly it. And you know what, Jay? It's not just you saying that or noting that. Brian Flores actually said that to me a few weeks ago. We were talking about, Brian Flores, of course, was completely raised up in the Belichick system. Right. That's all he knew about a head coach, about how an organization is run. Then he went, and obviously he was a head coach in Miami, didn't work out so well. He was trying to replicate all he had learned. Then he spent that year with Mike Tomlin, and now he's had 2 years with Kevin O'Connell. He was tremendous with us in talking about what he's taken from Kevin O'Connell, what he would do differently because of what he's learned from Kevin O'Connell, and what he has taken from Mike Tomlin. And if you get Brian Flores talking about Mike Tomlin, you might have to give him 3 days. That is how strongly he feels about him. But the one big, huge headline in all of it is that he learned from Mike Tomlin how to be a true CEO of an organization. And he said everyone thinks that he's a defensive coach, but he doesn't just coach the defense. He doesn't just coach the offense. He doesn't just coach the special teams. He said that Mike Tomlin, unlike anybody he's ever been around, finds a way to connect with every single player on his team, no matter what position they play. Mm-hmm. And I will say, in my experience now, 15 years of covering the National Football League, I really do think that that's Mike Tomlin's secret sauce. Every single person is important in his own way. I'm thinking of a story. Oh my gosh, it's been a dozen years. It's been 15 years, so I hope I can tell this story. Anyway, the Steelers had played the Ravens. It was a Thursday. It was a Thanksgiving night game. This was that famous Jacoby Jones tripping thing. The Steelers were down 8 at the end of the game. Le'Veon Bell, this is the year that I was first married. It was 2013. So the Steelers drive, as those Steelers-Ravens games always were, basketball games, it comes down to the very end. They're down 8 at the end. Le'Veon Bell appears to score a touchdown, but his helmet falls off, so it doesn't count. Then Heath Miller appears to score a touchdown, but he's short. Then finally, I think it's Le'Veon Bell gets in. So the Steelers are down 2 at the end of the game, and they go for 2 points to tie it. And Ben Roethlisberger throws a perfect pass to Emmanuel Sanders, who drops the ball. Earlier in the game, Shane Swisham, who was the kicker, had missed a kick. So you get to the post-game locker room, and Mike Tomlin immediately goes up to Emmanuel Sanders, and I can't remember the exact words, but it was something like, "Don't worry, Emmanuel, I got you. You'll get it next time." He goes up to Swisham. He says, "Don't worry, Swisham, I got you. Next time we get it." Just like that, every single player he is able to talk to, connect to, know what the right thing is. The way that he treats George Pickens is not the same way that he is treating Calvin Austin. And it goes back to his favorite line. And I'll tell you the truth. I know that Bull's heard me say this. It's sort of my central tenet of parenting, and it comes from Mike Tomlin. Fair is not equal. So
That's right.
treating everyone fairly does not mean treating everyone equally.
Wow.
That's his magic. And, it's funny. I'll tell you this. A guy like George Pickens, Adams is right. Adams right. It's a head case. I've never, in all my years on the sideline, witnessed any team ever having to give so much attention to one player to make sure his head is in the game. But Mike Tomlin will always wait for a player to turn the corner. Mike Tomlin doesn't give up on players. And look at what he's getting out of the guy.
No, you're right. I think
Can you
George.
think about all those years that they kept everything in house with Antonio Brown and
Yep.
Le'Veon Bell, all these guys,
Who are nuts.
all these jokers, and then all of a sudden they're gone and they want to talk crap or whatever. But
right.
there wasn't a peep out of that building.
No, probably 20 teams, Pickens would be a bust on.
Totally.
Because they
No,
the
I'll
coach
tell you. You
couldn't
know
get
what,
it.
Bull? I'll
Yeah.
tell you. I spoke to a general manager in the
Yeah.
National Football League, not of the Steelers, who said that he felt George Pickens was the single best talent at wide receiver in that draft. But he also said he wasn't on his draft board at all because of the head case
They
piece.
can't handle it.
So I bet there are a lot of teams like that. But this is the National Football League. Dustin, you know this as well as anybody. It really matters where you get drafted.
Totally.
What is the support system there? What is the locker room culture? What is the environment there? And that really speaks so much to who you are and what your success is.
I mean, Dustin's a perfect example.
Yeah, I'm laughing
He got
because
drafted by the wrong team.
Yeah, I mean, I got drafted
did.
to a team that was a bunch of clowns. It was
If you had
the
been
sex,
drafted
the sex
by New
boat
England-
scandal in Minnesota.
Yeah.
It was awful. The coaching staff got blown out the 6 months after I got there.
If you had been drafted by New England, you probably would have had a totally different career.
Yeah, for sure. Or any other team. I mean,
Good organization. You needed to
For
be
But
a
you
sure.
good
also think
organization.
about, it's like who's in trouble in college, but then comes to a veteran-laden locker room with, a strong player development staff, or who comes into a ready-made culture. It's just. I don't know that, this past weekend I had the two youngest quarterbacks in the NFL, one a second-year player and Anthony Richardson, the other Drake May. I don't know that Anthony Richardson has the same success if he's drafted in New England, because there is nothing around Drake May. But the person that Drake May is, he can manage, he can still grow, he can still develop. His raising up as a quarterback is completely different than Anthony Richardson's. His experience is completely different.
Aditi, I want to get something else from Hard Knocks last night. I know you're a financial guru. What would your advice? What would your advice be to Joe Burrow about buying that Batmobile? Would you have been in favor of that?
Unbelievable. Absurd. I don't even get it. Can you even drive it on the street? What is that? Just one of those things? You look at it in a garage? Cool. I look at it. I sit in it.
don't know.
I don't.
The serious.
You know
question.
what?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the next time I sign a $275 million contract, come back and ask me that question.
Yeah, that's right. Serious question.
Maybe
though.
I'd be better equipped. Yeah,
Aditi, you
go ahead.
know me pretty well. I don't know if you know I love to curse, right? I curse all the time. But I thought the Browns' offensive line assistant in that scene they showed, I thought he came off like a total clown. It was it was crazy. Every second word was the F word, and the players were not moved at all. They were half asleep. What did you think of that scene?
Well, don't you feel like a curse really only has impact if it's well placed?
Yes.
This whole idea of every other word, then it loses any effectiveness.
That's right.
I don't,
Yeah, it's
I
neutered
think you
when
tune
it's
it
every
out,
other word. It doesn't have any power.
It was crazy.
Right. It was interesting, though. Didn't you guys think it was interesting? They showed Kevin Stefanski addressing the whole room, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, and Zach Taylor. And all four were really very different.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think?
Yes. I loved in the beginning when they weaved in and out of the four of them. I thought that was fascinating because and a lot of times they were talking about the same things.
Exactly.
It was really interesting.
That's what's so right. Really, what happens in those meeting rooms in some ways is not all that different.
Yeah.
But then the delivery and the way of connecting is just completely so different.
And I thought, I'm not a big Zach Taylor fan, but I thought that Harbaugh, Taylor, and Stefanski came off neutral, not good or bad to me. Whereas Tomlin just came out, the whole thing, just like he's the greatest coach ever. As much as I respected Mike Tomlin, and obviously Dustin had a relationship with him, I've always respected him. But just from watching this, believe it or not, I think even more highly of him now after watching this.
Mike Tomlin has a way of commanding a room. Mike Tomlin has a way of putting his words together. Mike Tomlin has a way of speaking that really captures and grabs you. He's also got those wide eyes that you have to make eye contact with him. You can't avoid that.
Aditi,
I don't think
another thing he does, Aditi, I'm sorry to be loud.
No, go ahead, Dustin.
He makes everyone feel special in an individual way.
Yeah.
And like he had an impact on me. Like to this day I laugh because every time he sees me or saw me, back then he would call me Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, like the wrestler, just because my name's Dustin, whatever. And maybe because I was a white corner, because it was the American Dream too, right? But like to this day, like I'll see him at the Senior Bowl every once in a while or whatever, and like, you know, it could be years. I could go 3-4 years without seeing him. He'll see me. Dusty Rhodes! Like he does certain things like that everybody feels like he's got a connection to you. And when you do that and you make your players feel special like that, everyone feels bought in, I think.
He empowers. You know, another scene last night, the exchange with Nick Herbig. He empowers him. You are going to knock that ball loose. You are going to get the ball on the ground. Yep. He's like speaking it into existence in Herbig's head. And then once it happens, his response is, okay, don't act like you're surprised, which is the best part of it.
And
it takes me back. You remember that super famous mic'd up, I think it's the Super Bowl against Arizona, when James Harrison scores that touchdown, and he's walking off the field at halftime with its Lamar Woodley, and he goes, the last time I brought a number one defense, they got 2 touchdowns. It's like, you know, like in some ways it makes you feel like my dad, right? I'd bring home a 98 and he'd say, what happened to the last 2 points? Like, let's not get too happy here.
You expect
but on the other hand, he's only saying it because he expects it, you know? Like, he fully feels you're capable of getting the 100 or getting the 2 defensive touchdowns.
And it means something that the authority thinks that you're capable of more. Yeah. We'll put a bow on the Mike Tomlin show this way. All these great, wonderful things we're saying about the man, and yet there are still fans that will say, oh, yeah, he makes the playoffs, but he doesn't win. You know, when was the last time he had a playoff run? I understand all that. But I think it was last year when Canada was the offensive coordinator. Was that last year or is it 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was last year.
It was last year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, last year.
Seems like 5 years ago to me.
I know.
I have friends that are Steelers fans that were literally saying this line to me. This was before this season. Yeah, I think his time here is out. I think we just need a new voice. And I said to all of them, cool, we're going to hire him, and then you'll have to see him twice a year. Oh, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're wishing for more than you should wish for. Be thankful that you got Mike Tomlin. Be thankful, because 31 other teams would love to have
Greed's a hell of a drug, man.
So here's the thing. I think that familiarity always makes you feel that way, right? It's just the nature of the grass is greener. It must be greener. Whatever's happening in my neighbor's house must be better, or my neighbor's husband must be more romantic, just because you only know what you know. That's a piece of it. I also think there's a piece of like being spoiled. You know, Steelers fans go to are relevant in December every single year. Yep. So their expectations are just different. I mean, I'll never forget, look, last year, it was early in the season, I think it was week 1, and Adam Archuleta and my analyst and I, were kind of having the same conversation where he was saying, I don't understand why Pittsburgh fans want to run Mike Tomlin out of town. Yeah. And I was saying, well, you know, in Pittsburgh, like, it's not enough just to be relevant every year in December. Like, it's not enough to, have a non-losing season. Like, they want to actually see some wins in the playoffs at this point. And D'Amico Ryans walked in, and we said, we're kind of talking about Mike Tomlin and how you rank, you know, non-winning seasons. And D'Amico right there, just before his first ever game as a head coach, says, I'd sign up for that. I'd take that. Yeah. Like, right there. And you think about it, I mean, what is it? It's 18 years. 18 years. And his team has never been irrelevant in December. Yeah. His team is always playing for something in December. And sometimes they fall short. Sometimes they don't make the playoffs. And yes, it's very valid. When you are the Pittsburgh Steelers, you are, as Mike Tomlin said, hunting Lombardis. So having not won a playoff game since 2016 is indeed a big deal. But look at what he's done this year. I mean, everybody thought Russell Wilson was washed.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson has not looked like this in 3-4 years. Russell Wilson hasn't been able to stay within a system, and somehow he's staying within Arthur Smith's system. He's playing well. He's being a galvanizing force. They're running the ball well. They're, I don't know. It's just, he does deserve credit. But two things can be true. You can say that this is a great coach and that the fan base also wants to see a playoff win.
Yeah. And it's fair. Look, we're in December. They're still in the discussion for home field and the overall 1 seed.
We haven't talked about Jameis at all. Are you guys like over talking about Jameis?
No,
not at all.
No, not at all. Your thoughts about his performance Monday night? I say Charles Dickens could have been talking about him when he penned his famous line. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Because it was the full Jameis Winston experience.
He keeps both teams in the game. That's what he does.
That's great.
He giveth and he taketh. And,
do you know he had 688 total yards in terms of his throwing yards for the Browns and his interception return yards? 688
And by the way,
yards.
even more if Jerry Jeudy didn't chase down that last interception from behind to stop a third pick six.
That would have gone.
Which, quite frankly, of all the things that you all were talking about with Jerry Jeudy, that play might have been my favorite play.
Yeah,
that he gave it a hustle, that he didn't give up on it, that he did all that he could. Showing that energy and not just giving up on the play.
Yeah. It's big.
That was tremendous.
But what's your take? What's your takeaway? Is he a bridge to the next guy here? Would you, if you're Cleveland, would you go into that 2 or 3 year contract for him when the season's over, or what are your thoughts?
Maybe. A couple of weeks ago, I was saying, let's see what we know what Jameis is. Let's see what DTR is. Let's see who he is. Yeah. But on the other hand, Jameis was playing really well for Sean Payton before he got hurt, and he's a bit wiser. He doesn't have as much mileage on him. He's obviously a teammate that his teammates love. Yeah, there's a lot of feast or famine there, and you have to try to clean a lot of that up. I want to see the Browns run the ball. And obviously, Nick Chubb, a full year off the ACL is going to be different than the year off the ACL, or, the second year off the ACL is the proper way to say that. It's not a huge quarterback draft class, and I don't know what else is out there that you're saying, oh, go and get that. I mean, are you really thinking that like a Sam Darnold would be a major upgrade over Jameis?
No, I don't think so.
And you've still got 5 games. Let's see what happens in these 5 games.
That's right.
Exactly. What about Nick Chubb?
Starting with this weekend.
We think that, we talked about with Leroy that it's a little unfair to judge him off of the same scale that we used before because, G and I have gone through it 3 times each with the ACL surgery. It literally, people have asked me about it. What does it feel like when it happens? What does it feel like when you're rehabbing it? I would say just imagine taking your leg and sticking it straight into a wood chipper. The pain is excruciating, and the pain of rehab is even worse. So I'm very, he's Nick Chubb. He gets whatever he wants. I can't see him in another team's uniform. Does that happen?
I can't see that either. And look, the Browns made that as clear as day, that he means so much, not just to the club, but to the city. And we all read that Players Tribune article that he wrote and where he shared what Andrew Berry had said to him. Every single athlete I've ever spoken to who has had ACL surgery said it's not the first year, it's the second year back that you actually kind of feel like you're close to yourself. So the line play has not been what we wanted. The discipline on the line, clearly this is a line that misses Bill Callahan. The run design in general, I think that there are a lot of factors at play that it's not fair to just look at Nick Chubb and say, well, why aren't you Batman right now?
It's tough.
Aditi, what game you got this weekend?
I have the Raiders at the Bucks. Your old friend Baker Mayfield.
Oh, tell him Bull says hi.
I'll say this.
I'm sure he'll be sending his best back to
I'll say this. I have been completely fair to Baker this year. I have been very mostly complimentary of him because he's mostly played well. He still turns over the ball a little too much. which we saw again last week, and that's ultimately his biggest flaw, just like Jameis, when it comes to big games and big spots. But he has played well, and I've given him credit, so I've been fair about it.
He did have 2 nice drives.
If you spent time with him right now, you'd be blown away. It's funny, there's a conversation I had with Joel Bitonio actually last month. If you spent a lot of time with him, you'd be blown away by how different he is.
He's just more likable.
So much more
Seems
mature.
like he got humbled, man. I don't know.
Yeah. And you know what, Dustin, you're right, because look, he's grown up, he's matured, he's a father, his whole personality has come down a certain bit. Not that he doesn't have a chip, not that he's not a gunslinger, not that he's always competitive and a fighter. It's just like so much more manageable. And again, he's grown up, he's matured. But it really does, and I said this to Joel Bitonio, I don't know that same maturation happens if he'd been in Cleveland the whole time.
Right.
I think being shucked over for Deshaun Watson, the way that happened, having to go to Carolina and the mess that Carolina was, then getting that sort of momentary lifeline in LA, but also kind of just being tossed around like a piece of garbage. Then having to sign that 1-year deal with Tampa where he's fighting for his job, fighting for a job. No one even knows if he's going to be the starting quarterback or not. All of that, as Dustin said, humbled him in some ways. And I don't know that he comes out the same way if he just followed up in Cleveland, continued on in Cleveland.
There would be no reason for the change. In fact, Aditi, when he was here, when he got asked early in his career, do you need to change? He would always be kind of defiant about that. He's like, no, I am who I am. I'm not going to change. And you said it. It's clear just from the outside. But you've talked with him, you know him. Like, he's clearly changed, and you're backing that up. And I think there's every reason to believe that would not have happened. He wouldn't have had to change if he stayed here.
And just think about it. He'd ended the Browns playoff drought. He won that game on the road in Pittsburgh. Then the next year when he's fighting for a contract and trying to do too much and playing through too much pain, and there's the, side drama with Odell and whether he's a right fit and all of that. And then imagine that they did give him another contract. Like, what's really the learning lesson there?
Yeah.
What's the I don't know. Like, this is why they say that sometimes you have to hit bottom to rise again.
That's right.
Chris Carter always said the best thing that ever happened to him was getting released by the Eagles.
Yeah.
And there's other players where that's...
So good for him. He's doing well. He deserves his credit.
That's another crazy story. Look, Todd Bowles is a 500 coach, but he may now, for the 3rd year in a row, make the playoffs. Yeah. He's on the cusp of making the playoffs for a 3rd straight year. So kind of going, like, bringing it back full circle to a fan base. Yeah, like kind of full circle to a fan base and what they want. Okay, so can you be dissatisfied with your coach if he's getting your team in the dance every year?
Yeah.
Which is not as easy as you think it is.
Kirk Cousins has been falling apart in Atlanta.
He's
so
been
terrible lately.
He was in the red zone like 4 times.
Yeah,
it over
it's
this
bizarre.
Week.
So I don't know. Yeah, they got a good chance.
Aditi, thanks. It's great to see you again.
Always so fun to see you. I hope I get to see you before the holidays again.